I am Manuel Pulgar-Vidal, working with WWF International as the Global Lead for Climate and Energy, former Minister of the Environment of Peru and President of Cop28. I think that is tricky because when we think about unabated, we know that we are thinking technologies that first are not well proved. Second, it can for sure capture the total of emissions, just 10%, are extremely expensive. So we do prefer to have more clarity that this phase out, it is for all fossil fuel. And why? Because we are in a time in which the political process must send a clear political signal, not only to the economy, but to the people. We have to recover hope, we have to recover credibility in this process. And that is why, as WWF, we are pushing for a clear statement to phase out fossil fuel. I think that we cannot prejudge that cycle of 5 years, it is an outdated one. But what we have to secure, it is that the global stocktake will send good guidance, a strong, more than recommendations, kind of mandatory rules for the next cycle of the NDCs. That is why we are demanding a strong outcome, because as part of the ratchet mechanism, it is the only way to have improved NDCs by 2025. And if we are able to get there, probably we can put the world well on track. If not, we can repeat the level of weakness of the current NDCs, and we will lose 7 years. So that is why the sense of urgency of having a strong outcome on this COP. The problem with adaptation it is that we are always running out of resources. And part of the reason for that it is that there is not clear metrics nor indicators to define how much we are progressing on adaptation. That is why it is so important to have clear targets, but also clear criteria and indicators to mobilize the world toward more strong adaptation action. But, and there is a but, we have to recognize that unfortunately, even until now, no more than 40 countries have already fulfilled the mandate to have a national adaptation plan. I am all the time wondering what is happening with the other 160 countries. Why countries that are so vulnerable for climate change, as for example in my region, Latin America, why they are not putting that as a key priority. So the global goal on adaptation will help. We do need to have more resources in the adaptation fund, but also we have to do our own homework. That means in our own country, in our own territory, we have to define those actions. In this year, we have seen how much climate extreme events are hitting mostly the vulnerable people, the poorest people of the world, and even the developed world. So that is why adaptation it is a key element that depends on good decisions in a COP, but also clear actions domestically. Look, probably it is important to recognize that when I was appointed minister in 2011, I used to be, before of that, the executive director of an NGO. With a group of friends in 1986, when we were in the last year of the Faculty of Law, we created the Peruvian Society for Environmental Law. So I used to be in the work of the NGOs. Then I was appointed as minister for almost 5 years, and then came back into the civil society world. It's interesting because I think that we are better connected. Probably we used to be a bit separate, but now in the civil society we understand very well the political process, and on the decision makers, I think that they know perfectly what civil society is demanding. Something that it's happening because of the Paris Agreement, it is that the social universe, it has started to be more expanded. More awareness, more information, more institutions, more actors working towards achieving and honoring the promise of Paris. So I think that this COP it is showing that. We have 100,000 people in this COP, because there are the politicians and decision makers and negotiators, but we have a huge number of civil society organizations working towards the same. And that is connecting the process, what I think it is fantastic. I know that sometimes we are criticizing this huge participation, but I am pretty sure that each one of person who has came into this COP, it will be a multiplier of the message. let me say a couple of things. First, this nuclear community, I think that started to come into the COP in Glasgow. I saw some booths, some pavilions of this organization pushing or advocating for nuclear power as an alternative for fossil fuels. But let me say that in relation to nuclear, I have clarity. First, access. When we think about nuclear facilities, there are just 31 or 32 countries of the world that have those facilities. So it is very difficult to have less developed countries, the global south, accessing to this kind of technology. And we have to remind always a key principle of the Paris Agreement and the climate debate, not to leave anyone behind. So if that would mean that we will continue reproducing this lack of equity world because the lack of access, I do prefer not to consider. But there is a second reason. And the second reason, it is the timing. Now we are talking about fusion. We are talking about thorium, no, as a material to produce the fusion. The point it is that that has not been already proved. It is just in a pilot time. And it could take 20 years. But those 20 years mean not only that we will go over or overcome the end of this decisive decade, but even go 1 decade more. The point it is that we know that if we are not able to phase out clearly fossil fuels, we could have an overshoot by the end of this decade. So the timing, there is not a coincidence on how much more time the nuclear facility would need as a way to sort the current climate crisis. But there is a third reason, that it is safety, security. No, we have seen so many accidents. Now people is talking about smaller nuclear facilities. But again, that moved me back into the point of access and the point of timing. And probably let me finish by saying the window of opportunity for a real decarbonization, it's tiny. Our push and our advocate, it is to encourage the economic sectors to innovate with technology, to reduce and decarbonize their whole value chain. And that is why we are demanding that we have to walk the four transitions suggested by science. That means the energy transition, the industry, the cities and infrastructure, and the land use, forest and agriculture one. And when we think about the energy transition, it is a package in which to triple renewable energy, it is key. To doubling energy efficiency, all the two of them by the end of this decade, it is key. To phase out fossil fuels, but also to do all of this under a just transition approach. And also to promote electric vehicles, to eliminate subsidies to fossil fuels are key elements to walk that transition and to fulfill with all the action that we have to develop or to implement, in this decisive decade.